In other cases, genre knowledge disrupted uptake expectations. For instance, Nowacek describes a history assignment asking students to write a diary entry for a day in the life of a medieval individual, okay, someone living in medieval times. Now, this is fascinating because many students submitted psychological portraits. The instructor, the history professor, is interested in having a description of the material conditions of what it was like to live. Probably more like a Samuel Pepys type diary. But for us today, right, diaries, their use value is largely psychological introspective. So the power of genre, in this case, trumped the disciplinary expectations. Right? So the genres became powerful exigencies for transfer in ways that the instructor had not been able to predict. Again, right? All this is happening behind the scenes. The only reason we know about it is because Nowacek did a ethnographic study and took us in underneath the scenes. But for the most part, this happens, this drama happens outside our view as teachers. And I think that's a shame. Okay. So, final example. A few years ago, a student came to my office as a writing program director to complain about her course grade, on the grounds that her instructor's written feedback on her papers throughout the course was consistently too brief and unhelpful. Okay? Now, when I followed up with the instructor earnestly explained that he was experimenting with providing fewer comments. I'm not a sucker, really. With providing fewer comments to encourage students to develop stronger self-assessment and metacognition skills, which we had been talking about in the program training. Okay? The problem is that the instructor had not explained his pedagogical strategy to students enough, so that an important genre in the expected set of uptakes, teachers and comments on student papers, was minimized, and nothing else was put in its place. Okay? The relationship between uptake and genre is really interesting because genres are almost like they're almost like the touch points that help us move from uptake to uptake, right? They give us a surfacing point, if you will. So without something in the place, right, the student did not have a chance to perform an uptake that he was expected. So there was denial of an opportunity to co-participate in the series of updates between teacher and instructor. In place of the more detailed teacher comment, the instructor needed to create an uptake space for this other thing to happen. Right? And again, we often don't think about how uptakes, in order to be articulated and performed, need a site for articulation. Okay? So the instructor needed to create a space for the kind of meta-reflection he wanted students to do. Perhaps a student memo, where the student writes a response to the feedback. It says, from this feedback that I've given you, small, construct your own assessment. And then I'll check it, and I'll see if it matches what I had in mind. That can be a really cool way of teaching students to be more independent self-assessors. By not replacing the teacher feedback with another genre, the student that would reorient student energy, the lines of motion, in ways that the instructor intended, right? The instructor underestimated the power of students' uptake memory and the need for it to have a site for articulation. This example highlights the extent to which uptake memory informs our genre encounters and performances. In particular, the above example suggests that a change in one genre within the system of genres cannot occur in isolation. If an instructor wishes to reorient the work of assessment from the genre of teacher feedback to, say, the genre of reflective memo, he or she must also be prepared to redistribute the power dynamics that are maintained in the genre of teacher feedback. This includes making more visible such usually occluded meta-genres, if you call them, such as the instructor's grading rubric, so that students can have access to the expectations and values they will need to guide their self-reflection and assessment. So you can't just create a space for uptake. It needs to be authorized and informed. Okay, so uptake as such is at once the result of and the interplay between genres. While genres condition and secure uptakes, uptake can also precondition or overdetermine our encounters with genres, leading us in rhizomatic directions, unless we provide points for students to articulate those, even however dynamic they are. Right? We can channel it a little bit. I contend that we need to make uptake an object of our attention in genre research and teaching. By doing so, we can get at some of the learned, embodied inclinations, as well as the material conditions that guide our and our students' encounters with and performances of genre. We need space and time within our genre pedagogies to delay these uptakes enough so we can historicize them and make them a site of critical examination and pedagogical intervention. The key is to create space, right? It means having to spend time on things that often happen in private or behind the scenes. You can imagine that student going to her dorm and saying, this teacher's trying to convert me, right? I would like to have that conversation in the class to think about, okay, if you feel threatened in this way, but you still want to take up the assignment, what other resources are available to you? You know, especially if you're not in an interdisciplinary cluster where you don't know how the instructor is going to respond to a dialogue, right? I think students can learn extremely powerful and transferable skill in writing courses if we teach them how to take up to engage in unconventional uptakes and prepare their readers for them in ways that don't, backfire. Okay. I think that uptakes have a strong metacognitive dimension to them. They operate in metacognition, but sometimes at a level that is not fully aware. And the more we can get students to become aware of their uptakes, both in terms of when they encounter something, what do they do with it? What is made possible by this particular invitation? What uptakes are possible? When you choose certain uptakes, what is afforded by that? What is limited by that? What are the consequences of those kinds of things, right? Because uptakes represent their objects. How we take something up, right, is shaped by how we encounter it to begin with. Right? So that student encountered the assignment about Aquinas as an attempt to convert her. And that could be absolutely off, but it doesn't matter. Right? That started to inform her uptake, the squiggly lines, right? Started pushing in a certain way.